Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Good to see. Good to see. Thank you for joining us. This is lovely. I love this. Thank you for joining us for the Friday and the Friday before Halloween. Carrie Fee and I are your hosts for this event. And we were trying to figure out if the day before Halloween was a good day to do this. I know that's a major holiday for a lot of people. So thank you for coming today. Super excited. So I want to introduce our presenters today. So we have Jacob Waits. Jacob, welcome. And we have Kathryn Kane and Naomi Trad. Naomi, am I pronouncing your name right?
Yep, you're good.
Naomi Trad and Doya. So thank you all for coming. We are super excited. And we've got all of our folks here from all different parts of the country. So Jacob right now is in Massachusetts, and Jacob said it's actually snowing right now in Massachusetts.
And the snowblowers are out. So if you hear any like weird loud noises, that's probably what it is.
I'm not envious at all, Jacob. And Kathryn, you're in San Francisco right now, right? And Naomi is in Atlanta?
Yeah.
And Danny, are you in Miami right now?
Yeah, I'm in South Florida. Yeah, it's warm here. It's really warm.
Awesome. So just to let you all know, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to our presenters, and thank you to Carrie for helping to put this together. I'm just going to do a really quick bio introduction for everybody, and then the format of this presentation is going to be, there's going to be a little bit of talk from each of our guests. They're going to talk a little bit about themselves for a few minutes, and then we have a bunch of questions that we prepared from students. And so we're going to ask some of those questions of our guests. And then afterward, we're going to open up the floor to you all. So if you have any questions as we're talking about stuff, if you have any questions for our guests, either for everyone, or if you have a specific question you want to ask to a specific person, if you would please put that in our chat. And then we're going to be keeping track of those. And then we're going to reserve about 20 minutes or so at the end. We're going to end at 2:30 today. So we're going to reserve some time at the end to answer those questions. So if anything comes up and you want to ask, then please put that in the chat. Okay. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to share my screen real quick and introduce our presenters and show you a little bit of their background, what they've been working on. So just starting with, and please let me know you can see my screen, correct?
We can see it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So starting with Danny. Danny is an emerging South Florida artist. He received his BFA in Studio Art from FSU in 2015. Danny is a muralist with many paintings being displayed prominently in major cities, including downtown West Palm Beach. After graduation, he painted 2 murals in downtown Hollywood before he was commissioned by Ram Real Estate in 2017 to paint his largest creation on the east side of the Alexander, a luxury apartment building in downtown West Palm Beach. He creates his paintings using layering techniques that developed through his experience in design and color theory, combined with traditional oil painting techniques. So welcome, Danny.
Thank you.
Kathryn is originally from Miami, Florida. Kathryn graduated from FSU with a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in studio art and minoring in museum studies and art history in 2017. Kathryn moved to San Francisco shortly after graduation for an art internship with the Presidio Trust, a historic national park. She was brought on as a full-time staff member working in the art program management and visitor experience until 2020. Types of projects she worked on include managing the Andy Goldsworthy Outdoor Sculpture Collection, which Kathryn, I'm very jealous because I'm a big fan of Andy Goldsworthy. That's Kathryn with Andy right there. And also collaborating with nonprofit partners for art in the parks, developing and facilitating art in nature programs and field trips for youth and adults, and coordinator for volunteers and designing graphics and illustrations. Kathryn is currently freelance illustrating. So welcome, Kathryn. Next, we have Naomi Trad. Naomi graduated with a BA in Studio Art and Advertising in 2016. Naomi is a graphic designer from France, currently based in Atlanta, Georgia, with a specialty in motion graphics and user interface design. She's previously worked as a graphic designer in Tallahassee, with an emphasis on branding and facilitating communication across digital platforms, and currently focuses on developing branding and graphics for television and digital platforms at Cartoon Network. She spends her free time knitting and playing video games when she isn't outside enjoying Atlanta's 100-degree weather. So welcome, Naomi. Thank you for being here. And finally, we have Jacob Waits. Jacob graduated with a BFA in Studio Art in 2014. Jacob is the visual and interaction design lead at IDEO Collab's Cambridge studio. With a background in product design and development, he likes to build digital projects that are paired with physical forms and experiences. He focuses on not only building projects to learn, but also helps craft brand experiences and stories around them. Working on branding and fabrication projects, both small and large scale at the Collab, he seeks to develop and inspire others through experimentation with new technologies. Prior to joining IDEO, Jacob led creative endeavors at Foremost, building design communities in Northwestern Florida. He also worked as a digital product designer at Bright Red TBWA. So welcome, Jacob. Jacob, just real quick, because out of curiosity, what were you doing there in that video?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
We were just testing a small grading sheet. That's like a polarizing film. So there were some glasses that we were prototyping a long time. I was cleaning out my desk actually in that photo because we were all leaving for COVID. So, but I think that was, yeah, something that we had a small prototype that was trying to develop some like shading design for automatic glasses that would shift. And those were just like some small prototype pieces that I had laying around.
Very cool. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So the first thing that we would like to do is give you all a few minutes to talk openly about whatever it is that you want to talk about. In particular, I'm really interested in hearing about, the kind of the impetus for this talk was, what happens after graduation? It's like all of this stuff happens while you're in school, and then people leave and they go on with their lives. And then it's like, we hear about you later and you've had this amazing career, all these career experiences, but what happened in between graduation and where you are right now? It's like, what does that middle piece look like? So that's how this whole thing kind of got started. That was the conversation that Carrie and I had. So we're really excited to hear about all of the amazing things. We can't hear about all of them, but a lot of the amazing things that happened to you in the meantime. So Jacob, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had like a bunch of images that go with this. I can share my screen really quickly. It's going to be like super fast. So is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I think clips are. Yeah, so I'll make this like really fast, but I am, yeah, you should do that, by the way. So yeah, I'm a visual and interaction design lead at IDEO Collab. Basically, after graduation, I was involved in a bunch of different kind of like small community things that led me to actually move up here to Massachusetts, where I started working with Food and Future Collab, where I kind of, basically lead a bunch of designers and non-designers in designing different kind of like both consulting and collaborative projects. So I take on a bunch of different digital collaboration type of like projects. So I just have a ton of stuff that I've worked on, and it's a lot to talk about. But basically, if I focus on the time that I had at FSU, I was much more focused on printmaking and digital fabrication. I spent a lot of time at FAR, a lot of time with like Rob Duarte and Denise and everybody. A lot of printmaking focus, building dangerous shit in CAD and working on, I'm mostly just the guy that melted ice as his thesis project, and they probably won't never let me back in that gallery ever again. But afterwards, I got involved in Domi, which is a small incubator near Railroad Square that kind of helped me kind of figure out how I wanted to go into the world as a designer. I spent a lot of time there making connections, and it was a really good experience. After I had kind of like, immediately after I graduated, I went to a bunch of small kind of design firms locally in town, and I started working on like higher profile clientele at the Zimmerman agency, where I was working for like Bright Red TV2A, doing a bunch of like advertising stuff. And after a year, I was just like, fuck advertising. I hate that stuff. And I will tell you actively to not work in the advertising industry. But so I quit and started my own thing foremost. And we started doing a lot of community projects. And we redeveloped this kind of property to create a community space in the South Side, Happy Motoring. And ever since then, I left to kind of do a bunch of different kind of food work. Actually, when I left, I went to Future Collab, which was a kind of partnership with Target and IDEO and MIT Media Lab, where we kind of prototyped different future technologies. We made like a bunch of different stuff. Most notably probably was we had a prototype of things like Good and Gather, which is now their like organic food brand. And I've worked on a bunch of different health projects. And most recently, we've been working on getting our annual event is usually a physical in-person event in San Francisco called Blueprint. And this year we had to convert everything to being a digital event. So I was creating a bunch of different like tools for how we actually do that digitally, just because of collabs and COVID, I mean. And yeah, and I'm also right now focused on working with Drawdown Labs, which is a sort of like climate change solutions nonprofit. They have a really good book, kind of like listing a bunch of different climate change solutions. And Drawdown Labs is sort of their interactive collective of corporations to basically try to advance our solutions towards a climate positive future. So yeah, and we also do cover bands. So I usually actively play because a lot of us are musicians. So yeah, that's me. Sorry if that was over 5 minutes.
Amazing. No, great. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so Kathryn, would you like to go next?
Sure. Well, thank you, Carrie and Liz, for inviting me here. And I'm happy to share about some of the things I've been doing since being at FSU. And the first thing that I wish I knew before graduating was that first, it's okay to not have it all figured out and to be gentle and kind to yourself in that process. So a little bit about me, I am from Miami. Florida girl, always loved art and loved making art. So as a career, I envisioned a way, at least I hoped to be able to combine those two interests into one. And I felt a lot of pressure from family and from society, which is something I think everyone here can probably relate to as well, to pivot towards something else, but I wanted to be in art, and so decided that's what I wanted to do. And my undergrad, I was a studio art major with double minors in museum studies and art history. And upon graduation, I did graduate in 2017. I had no idea what I was going to do next, and just started applying for positions all over the country. And that's one thing that I have learned is that it just takes one. So you need to apply for everything that seems interesting, and something's going to stick. So I actually was on the Career Center website at FSU and spent a lot of time going in there, working on resumes and whatnot. And I found a post for an internship in San Francisco. It was an art internship with the Presidio Trust. And first, I'd never been to California. And second, I had no idea how an art internship would make sense in a national park setting. So I decided to apply and I actually got it. And this was within 5 days after graduation. So I actually did walk across the stage not knowing what I was doing, and just began this unexpected journey to try something new. And at the time, it was a really unique internship that offered both housing and a stipend, which is hard to find and hard to come by. And the internship was an art focus. So both the museum stuff and creating, which was what I was hoping for. So Andy Goldsworthy, if you are unfamiliar with his work, I definitely recommend checking him out. He's a really interesting person, creates these huge, impressive, large-scale ephemeral artworks. And ephemeral just means it changes with time, and these materials are collected from nature. So coming in as an intern and essentially being in charge of that collection was a really great first thing to work on, and looking at the unexpected parts of conservation for sculptures that are meant to be destroyed, and what would a park setting as a museum offer to visitors and volunteers and programming. So it was a really great opportunity to try out a lot of different things and simultaneously make work. My internship was a year, and the Presidio Trust created a full-time position. So I worked there for 3 years until this year, and I'll get back to that. But yeah, it was awesome being in a national park and looking at just a different kind of context for how to pair all of my interests together. Some of my favorite projects that I worked on, of course, being able to work with Andy Goldsworthy, but being a part of the sculptural investigations. And one of the sculptures, and I could talk about these all day long, but one of them is 90 feet tall and is made of 40 cypress logs, and it's over 12 years old. So for the 10-year anniversary, we did an investigation of the foundation and testing of the wood and all kinds of things that I wouldn't have considered looking at sculptures outside. Like, there are bugs that live in them and people that interact with them. So a lot of more of the dirty kind of nitty gritty. I also created an educational opportunity for youth, and there was a lot of connection with schools, and it's an art-based field trip so that kids can learn about art and make art, and things like leave no trace and concepts for how to enjoy the parks that are their parks. It's the national park system belongs to all of us. So I think I'm rambling, coming at the end of my time, but I also was able to create art, and it began as simple signage or something ended up on a bus at one point as an advertisement. But then I was doing more creative things, like I illustrated a concept about coyote interactions for the public, and the biologists use this to teach and use for programming. And then I also made an animation, which is something I'd never done before, but I was able to learn that. And then it was about one of the sculptures and used for a presentation. So anyway, my future is completely open, and COVID has made things really hard, as we all know, and we've been affected in different ways. So museums have been hit really hard, and the Presidio Trust had to cut some of their staff. So my team was disassembled, but I have an open mind. I'd love to go back if there's an opportunity to do so, but for now I'm freelancing, and I hope to make a website of some of my illustrations I've made since then. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathryn. Naomi?
Yeah, so I will probably mimic a lot of what everyone else has been saying, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do at all when I was at FSU. And so I double majored in advertising and studio art. And I will sort of mirror what Jacob said, and don't get into advertising because it sucks. And so I didn't like it. And it took me going through that entire major to understand that I didn't like it, and actually worked at Zimmerman for a little while as well. And my, I guess, most valuable advice, or what I kind of would have wanted to know most when I was at FSU, is just like, don't be afraid to try a lot of different things. Because I remember being scared to try like printmaking classes and stuff because I had never done that before. And I was just kind of like, what am I going to make a career out of with these classes and that kind of thing. So it's just a question of just like go for everything. College is the best time to try and see what sticks. And you're, afforded this amazing opportunity to have these professors that know a lot and have a lot of experience. And I wish I had learned a little bit more from them or asked them maybe a few more questions or networked a little bit harder with them. But that's just hindsight. But I would say that that's kind of the best advice that I could give myself in the past. And I know that a big thing that shaped my experience at FSU was working at the student cinema on campus, the ASLC. And I liked going to the ASLC just because I like movies and that kind of thing, but I worked as a graphic designer, and that ended up being sort of the basis for most of my portfolio coming out of college. And that really, really helped me to get, before I left school, I had an internship with Adult Swim in Atlanta, and I really do feel like that opened a lot of doors for me. And the only reason I got that internship, I think, is because I had a variety of work in my portfolio from the ASLC. But I also worked at different places. I worked at a movie theater as well around Railroad Square, and I worked a little bit with like in and out of Domi stuff as well. So it's just kind of like throw yourself out there. And for me, the biggest thing leaving college that was important to me was having a variety of things in my portfolio, because having been part now of teams that review that kind of thing, I know that cover letters and resumes are wonderful, but unfortunately your work, or fortunately, your work speaks much more than your words a lot of the time. So you want to just show people that you have tried a lot of different things, that you are invested in, learning new skills and that kind of thing. And so I think that's like kind of the most important thing. And the thing I'm most thankful for when I was at FSU is that I kind of like threw caution to the wind and did that. But then also there's a question of just being, like Kathryn has said, be kind to yourself. I know there's like this hustle culture, especially in social media. And I personally, if you know me, I'm someone who's very, very opposed to that. And I think you need to just treat yourself really kindly. And if you are feeling overwhelmed by how much stuff everyone else is producing, get off social media. Just stop thinking about it. Just go at your own pace. Everyone is different, and stop comparing yourself to everybody else. And just try and get positive things, out of your environment, as opposed to just comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you're not good enough or you're not doing enough, because I felt like that for so long. And I'm in a position right now that I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, that's so cool, or how did you get this job? But I felt so like for so long, I spent so much time thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough. My work is I'm not posting on Instagram every single day. And that is just like not a tenable thing for me anyway. For some people it definitely is, but you have to understand that you're an individual and you cannot just hold yourself to the same standard as everybody else. It's just not a thing that you should do. So that's kind of like my biggest point, is that like in college, be kind to yourself, have fun, like, worry about your portfolio and your career prospects for sure, but take it as a time to really explore and try different things. And you're not going to know exactly what you're going to want to do, immediately, and that's totally okay. I've switched career paths and focuses several times, and I'm only 26, so it just happens like that. And you have to just like go with the flow, be kind, have your eyes on the horizon, but also just like appreciate what you're doing, because you will not get college again, and it's an experience that you will miss. And so just kind of appreciate that while you're there. And that's kind of the best advice I can give about my time and your time. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Naomi. And Danny.
Hey. Yeah, so a lot of what they've said, I'm on the same page. It did a lot of I think the best advice I had was to fail and to make a lot of mistakes in college and try everything. I coming out of college, there was a lot of uncertainty. I didn't really know exactly what I was gonna do. But I think it's important to just seize every little opportunity you can, and try everything. I mean, I took tons of classes. I took every discipline, I think: printmaking, web design, graphic design, and sculpture. I'm terrible at sculpture. But coming out of college, I just got an opportunity to do a residency randomly in Hollywood. Someone had talked to someone in Wynwood who owns a ton of property or something like that, and they referred me. They like, hey, check out this guy's work. And I basically stayed in a villa while they were renovating these other villas in this compound. And the guy basically told me to, like, he would pay me every 2 weeks rent free, and I just have to paint murals and do artwork for the interiors of these buildings. Basically, he was flipping houses basically and putting them Airbnb type of situation. So I thought, I mean, I couldn't turn that down, so I did that for a while, and that's where I first did I did like three of my first murals there in this compound. And from there, around that time, that's when a lot of things on social media were kind of working. That you got to try and finesse the algorithms, I guess, to get your work in front of people's eyes, basically, because you can be super talented, and the way things are set up now, you have to find ways to get on platforms to get in front of people's eyes, I guess. So I had my website built at the time. I think I did it with WordPress. I think now everyone does it with like Wix, and like there's all these other platforms that make it a lot easier. But a lot of my work started to gain some traction, and I started seeing some of my drawings and paintings tattooed on people, and just a little more attention while I was here in this residency. And from that residency, someone contacted me to paint live at some event in Miami at it was like the Met 3, this new building, and they were doing tours for developers. So it was a developer tour thing, and I was just like painting on an easel or something. And so a developer came up to me and was like, listen, we're building this high-rise in West Palm Beach downtown, and we need a muralist. And they had hired like Tristan Eaton before to do the other building, and I was like I know who that is. And he's like big inspiration to have a mural 7 stories up next to like a legend in the street art like realm. That was huge to me, and I couldn't say no. But I went to the meeting, and I'm looking at this 7-story building, and just like very daunting, and like something that seems impossible, because I had some practice with murals, but I never saw myself as a muralist. I was in love with oil painting, and making that transition was like a little difficult, but the challenges are like everything. I love the challenges, and bettering yourself in any discipline is growth. And growth, I think the best advice is growth and comfort. They don't coexist. So if you're growing, you're probably uncomfortable. And from then on, I also got this in college. This print that's behind me is Dave Kinsey, who I really looked up to, still look up to. He sent me this print, and it says, "Danny, keep up the killer work." And I was like, that meant like everything to me, because I like love this dude's work. In college, I looked up to this guy, and it's like he's like following me now, and like we like can talk about things. With like really big moment for me. But yeah, everything's kind of happened pretty randomly, to be honest. I haven't done a whole lot of outreach, which I recommend. You should first build a strong portfolio and have kind of good methods of outreach to to get opportunities instead of just waiting for the opportunity to come. But I've been lucky in that sense. From each project brings more projects, and as long as you keep a strong work ethic and kind of regimen or discipline on your practice, your portfolio will be strong enough to just keep getting good opportunities. So right now I have something in Pompano and another big project in Delray. But I'm focusing on 2 collaborations that are a little smaller, a little more manageable right now. So that's what I'm doing right now. And yeah, that's me.
Very cool. Thank you, Danny. So I loved when you said finessing the algorithms as a larger metaphor.
Yeah.
That's really, and I'm hearing a lot of echoing from all of you about how this whole kind of mysterious thing of post-graduation works or doesn't work. It's like it's something that kind of is organic in a way. It seems,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, so you all kind of are touching on one of my first questions that I was going to ask you as far as our prepared questions, as far as what advice that you would give people. So I think I'm going to move on in terms of the questions that we got from our students ahead of time into maybe some more of the nitty gritty, some of the more specific questions that we got. So if you don't mind, I'm going to look at our prepared questions here. And there was one question that was asked of all of you. So if you all wouldn't mind addressing this in some way, I love this question. So when you have a creative block or feel imposter syndrome, a lot of people are talking about imposter syndrome these days, using that term. What is your process when you have creative block or imposter syndrome? What do you do to get past the block or insecure feelings?
Okay, I'll start. So I've always doubted myself. I think it's very human to doubt your skill set, even though if you could be confident about how good you are at something, but it happens, especially when you're staring at something blank, you know, like a blank canvas or a blank facade to a building or something. But I think it's important to plan things out a little bit and structure a process to get something done in the best way you possibly can. But also have, I guess, maybe secondary outlets that kind of pacify this insecurity, and that could be things I do besides painting, because painting can also get stressful and you can doubt yourself and need a break, you know. I love playing the piano. I love playing soccer. And listening to music always helps, especially if you're working. Like the great thing about art is that you can listen to music while you're doing it without it distracting your work. And I think those are great ways to deal with that.
So I know that I struggle with this a lot, sort of on like a daily basis still. I've even like gone so far as to like ask my boss if it was a mistake to hire me. Like I've gone through that many times. Like it's just a natural thing that happens. I will sort of just like parrot again myself and just say like when that happens, one, be off social media, because what you're doing is just comparing yourself to everybody else. So when you're having specifically those kinds of feelings, just get off of it. And then I'm going to agree and just like do something other for a little bit, do something other than what you're fixating on. So if you're having a really hard time with like drawing or painting, go to something else. Like I have taken up my grandma hobby of knitting, and it's really helped because it's just like something that's completely removed from my art, and it allows me to get better at something and feel good and just change my mind a little bit. And it's just kind of a question of like just powering through it, and know that literally everybody around you is feeling the exact same thing at different times. Nobody in the art community has not felt this way one time or another. Nobody. So even the people you look up to the most and think they're like infallible, they have days where they wake up and they're like, this is a mistake. Like there's no reason I should be successful, or like people like my work. So just kind of keep going through it and know that it's a very normal part of being an artist, and try and channel it into, you know, making yourself explore other things, or just kind of, you know, just try to turn it into something positive is what I would say.
I tend to agree as well in that when you come up with a creative block, that it's sometimes hardest to push through it and to just keep trying. And one thing that I've found is consulting my community and having peers and friends and people who are also artists. And if I'm just hitting a wall with something, if I show it to them and ask what they would do or what their thoughts are. And sometimes that helps because it gives a new perspective and a new way that maybe I didn't consider on my own. So just to continue to push through. But again, just being aware of what your mindset is like. And if you're just going to keep pushing and nothing's changing, then I don't know, go for a walk or get a snack, do something to kind of change what's happening in that moment to make it easier on yourself, and you will make it work. Just keep going.
You know, I definitely also feel imposter syndrome almost every day at IDEO, especially when like, you know, you work with, you know, like, oh, you know, I worked with the guy that made like the fucking iPad the other day or something. Like, you know, that's something where you're having to like compare your skill set or your experiences to someone else, like echoing Naomi's kind of like thoughts. I think if I feel those kinds of things, or if I'm not feeling confident in a moment, then I have to maybe like go and hype myself up somewhere, like, you know, in front of a mirror or something, like just, you know, find a spot where you are yourself and you are comfortable with your own skills and your own experiences, and know how far you've gotten to like this point. I mean, I know that like, you know, as a male human, I have a certain set of privileges that don't allow me to like, you know, feel the same amount of like, you know, of this feeling as other people. And I think in my mind, when I can think about how I got to where I am and the hard work, that I think that if I take that mindset of like, you know, I got this far, I can keep going, then that's really the thing that keeps me driving. And I think in terms of like creative block, I think that's like a different story of, you know, I think a big reason why people get a lot of creative block today is because you're always being fed the same information through like the internet or social media, and you're going to those places for inspiration. Like there are books and like other things out in the world, like nature, that are thousands of years old and are not like the thing that just popped up on Instagram on your feed like 20 minutes ago. So I would say that's probably where the most time when I find myself like finding creative block, I'm either not framing the situation in such a broad way that I can abstract some kind of like creative thought, where really I just need to like zoom way far back out. I'm like thinking about it in like this tiny little box. So I think like reframing is really key, or just going for a walk in nature and getting out of like where you are in your comfort zone. So yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you. So the next question I have for all of you is, what was your own best practice when trying to make professional connections as a college student? In other words, how did you begin to build your own network, and how do you continue to build it now? Whoever would like to go first.
I get okay. I'll just
I got it.
same
Sorry.
routine, I
This is my
guess.
first time on Zoom. We don't use Zoom.
No worries.
So I will say that the biggest thing is internships and just getting yourself out of classes in terms of like your network, or if you're going to stay in your classes, go with your professors and like kind of ask them for internships or advice or who they know and that kind of thing. And it's just like kind of a shameless practice of you have to just be really forward about the fact that you are trying to network and you are trying to get more connections, and that's totally okay. But I have felt that like my Adult Swim internship, for example, helped me know a lot of people who are working in that, you know, sort of career path. And meeting all those people meant that 3 years later, when I was, you know, ready to get out of Tallahassee, I knew who to email or who to contact on LinkedIn. And I could be like, hey, remember me? I was the annoying girl who came in your office every other day and was like, can we talk about connections? You know, and that's just like kind of one of those things where you have to put your pride aside a little bit and just know that people know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. There's nothing bad about it, because it's a sort of like symbiotic relationship. Because if you do well, those people now know you. If they do well, you know them. It's just kind of like a helpful all around thing. And I will say that I did not take enough advantage of my teachers, my professors, and everyone who had like all their wide knowledge. I just did not, when I was that age, I think it just did not occur to me that those people have very large professions and large amounts of experience behind them. And I just kind of was like, oh, they're just teaching me studio art. And it's just like, no, those people are doing that kind of on the side. They have entire lives that you don't know about, and entire, you know, areas of knowledge and expertise that you could benefit a lot from if you just kind of get your head out of the sand a little bit and you're like, okay, the world is larger than just me in this class. So I would definitely say just like go to office hours, go talk to your professors, come to class early, stay late, just talk to them about these things and just be like, how did you get where you are? What did you do? What was your path? Do you know anyone who could help me? Do you know any internships, etc.? They're always really helpful, you know, happy to help. So just go for it.
I missed the question because it chopped up. I'm sorry.
And I'm muted. So lovely technology. Just your advice about networking, how you got started networking as a college student, and what do you do today to kind of make connections?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was working locally in firms, you know, I was taking every chance I got to like go to different conferences. I mean, this is from the perspective of designers, so I mean, it might not be relevant for like painters or sculptors. I think like I mean, I don't know. It is pretty relevant actually. I think like in terms of just getting those connections, you know, finding people that share your interests, or like if you know that somebody is like going to be at a conference that you follow on social media, like go try to talk to them, like put yourself out there. I mean, I think you never know like who you're going to meet when you're out in those kinds of things, or like those kinds of situations. And I think especially locally in Tallahassee, I know now, I mean, the AIGA has been built up. There's a lot of cool people involved in that. And, you know, if you're trying to be something, you know, that you're building up to like a sort of like network-based scenario for like freelance work or illustration, especially like building up those people in that network, even locally, would be a huge, you know, access potential for like even farther away. I know a lot of people have like national and international clients down there. And especially Domi Station was kind of where I sort of found my kind of like way of working. And I think it was interesting to me to be in a place where like people need design there because they are startups and they don't have a lot of money, and you know, you don't probably have a lot of experience. So there's like an interesting kind of like leveling field there for you to be able to like build up more of like your chops, and for you to find other people that are kind of like really need your perspective as an artist and as a creative person. So I think definitely trying to find your ways into different avenues where like your skills as an art or design major is like a needed entity, and people are willing to pay you for that and, you know, value that, then that's something that is, you should put yourself in that situation, I guess is the thing. So I would say that, and also I did have like the opportunity to go travel to like Facebook, because they offered me to go to like their F8 conference or whatever. There was like a developer conference, and to me, it was at that moment when I was like, oh, I don't actually have to be like a little bit of like a validation moment, just because I thought that like up till then my product design work or my digital work like wasn't really that great. But it was kind of a moment of like, hey, I can actually go to other places that are much larger than where I am, to be found for this work. And that was when I was just like, fuck advertising, I'm just gonna go try to build something myself. And I think like building something where you are is a very like unique aspect to what I thought I could be doing. And I think you don't have to have everything figured out like right when you graduate, and you definitely don't have to go work for someone, or for a large like notable thing, to be the best creative person you can be. So I think trying to build it where you are locally and branch out from there is definitely a way for you to keep it not so stressful, I guess, in trying to build up your career all at once.
Awesome.
I just to jump in on that part and that point specifically, just getting yourself out there and talking to people, something that I definitely I wasn't looking forward to as an undergrad was taking public speaking, and I pushed it back to the very later, but it was actually one of the most beneficial classes I could have taken, and learning how to talk to people, and you're really just trying to market yourself and introducing you and your interests, and being able to make those connections is really important moving forward. While I was at FSU, I had 2 internships, and they are unpaid volunteer experiences. So that's one thing that, it comes with the territory. When I was with the Lemoyne Center for the Visual Arts, basically working the front desk, I met somebody with the National Endowment for the Arts in DC and connected with her, and we are still in contact today. And so when I moved to San Francisco, I let her know, and every couple months we check in. So hopefully, should something pop up for me in DC, I have somebody who I could talk with. And related to just taking experiences and internships, I feel like from an art perspective, we're often told, oh, you need to, for the exposure, you can do this. And sometimes it's paid and unpaid. And I feel like that's pretty resentful. I mean, I resented being like, you just do this for experience. But I have had certain connections come out of those experiences, and doing something for free, although you should be, making sure to have value in your work and your time, that those connections can then lead to further things. So just being open to connecting and trying new things.
That's great.
Yeah, I think, can you hear me? Sorry, I don't know. Okay. Kind of to touch on what Kathryn was saying, it was really hard for me to put myself out there. I'm sure everyone here is somewhat introverted, and I never liked public speaking at all. But opportunities like, I also did the Chain of Parks when it was like an emerging artist featuring booth type of situation. And I remember setting up the booth, and I had to have a mailing list. I think growing a mailing list is very important, because I started doing that almost in high school, just getting emails, asking for business cards, because people aren't just going to give you it's okay to ask for a business card if they have it, and just kind of collect a Rolodex of people you can contact for to do newsletters. Maybe something I should probably do more is doing maybe a weekly or monthly newsletter to your mailing list. It is a good practice, which I haven't been really doing, but I think that's good advice for anyone trying to grow their contacts. I'm seeing there's like questions in the chat. I don't know if I should answer those now or.
If they relate to what you're talking about, sure. If not, we're going to hold some time at the end to address Danny.
Okay.
A lot of questions in there already, so I know what you're all anxious. I have a couple more though. I'd like to ask you all before we get into those, if that's okay. So there were a couple of questions that, and if I could ask maybe one question of each of you really quickly, and then we'll dive into those in the chat. So Kathryn, real quick, let's see. I just want to make sure I don't ask you something that you kind of already addressed. Well, can you talk more about your interest in museum education? So if someone was interested in getting into museum education, what words of encouragement could you offer to someone that's trying to break into that field?
Sure. Well, I think definitely you need to take opportunities related to education and to build up your skill set. If you are interested in working with a particular age group, it's helpful to know about the K-12 standards, or it just depends on what aspect of education you're looking into. And when I was in Tallahassee, I was a camp counselor teaching art, and that was with the Lemoyne Center for the Visual Arts. So that kind of then became helpful for my future with the Presidio. And one thing that I found was really interesting is working in education in a not formal education sense, so not working in a school system, is that you utilize your experience in unique ways. So the education staff, everyone there was an archaeologist or a biologist, or myself working from with a background in art. And so using your experiences helps give you a new perspective in the terms of education. And definitely just understanding your audience and trying out and being creative ways to teach. And from a museum context, one thing I utilized a lot was visual thinking strategies and these kinds of tools. I utilized Coursera, which is an online resource that has a lot of free materials. Because of the pandemic, MoMA in New York released, I believe it was creative strategies for educating in museums, and there's a bunch of free resources that you can use. And so, collaborating with people and just getting out there and working on art education. So I'd be happy to talk about that more if anyone wants to connect later.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so next question is for Naomi. I have to say that when people heard Cartoon Network, they were very, very excited to hear about that. And also the fact that you did an internship at Adult Swim while you were still a student. I think that a lot of people, when they find out about that, they're very excited about that. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what is it like working for Cartoon Network? How did you get that job? Was there any like secret formula that you need to tell us of how to break into things like Adult Swim and Cartoon Network?
Yeah, so I applied to the Adult Swim internship on a complete whim when I was a senior. And I would say that probably the best thing, based on, I ended up having a pretty close relationship with my sort of like manager boss at Adult Swim. What they told me was just like my portfolio showed a lot of variety, and that's what they were kind of interested in, because it seemed like it's something that I could work on different areas. I had a little bit of UI experience. I had a little bit of like traditional illustration. I had some graphic design. I had some digital illustration. So it's that kind of thing that sort of helped maybe put me a little bit above the rest in terms of that. But again, the imposter syndrome comes in and I'm like, it was a complete fluke. I don't know why they chose me, but they ended up doing that. And then in terms of sort of like revisiting that connection ended up not helping me a whole lot for Cartoon Network, just because Adult Swim and Cartoon Network are such different companies as much as they are related. So with Cartoon Network, I actually got laid off of a job in Tallahassee, and I kind of did the thing where you just apply to everything. And so I was just looking at whatever I saw online, and I was like, might as well. And Cartoon Network ended up getting back to me, which again, my imposter syndrome was like, there is a large mistake happening here. But as far as what it's like working now, it's a very, very cool experience. Having this sort of like impression of working towards a greater, not a greater good, but like a larger project, a larger sort of thing like that is really, really fun, because it's so segmented, because it's such a large company that I really just focused purely on graphic design and art. And that's really nice to not have to worry about, like, I have producers who give me the assets I need and give me deadlines and that kind of thing. And it's really nice to not have to like compartmentalize my time as much. And that's what I would say is the best part about working for a larger company as opposed to a smaller one. But I will say that working for a large company has its drawbacks, as does everything. You have to work within the brand. You know, Cartoon Network specifically is a children's television area, so I have to be careful about how I present things. We can't have any really like adult content or anything like that. Things have to be really bright and follow the colors of cartoon, which can be, it feels a little restrictive sometimes, but I've chosen to kind of like look at that as a way to work with those guidelines and work with boundaries and kind of find cool ways to push art through those anyway. So it's been really, really great. And I would say that just like try over and over and over. I cannot tell you how many Turner jobs I applied for before I eventually got anything back. I must have applied like 20 times. So if I'd gotten discouraged after the 19th, I wouldn't be working at Cartoon Network. So it's just a question of just like keep going, even when you're like, this is absolutely a shot in the dark. It's never going to happen. Just keep trying and reach out to people on LinkedIn. I've had a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn, which is like funny to me because I'm like, I've not, you know, I'm like on the lower tiers of this, but they ask me sort of like, hey, like, what's the process for that kind of thing? And how do I apply? And it's really helpful because I've brought some of those portfolios up higher up, you know, and we've brought some of those people in for interviews. So it's just like, reach out. Don't feel like, oh, I can't talk to this person or something, or they're never going to like raise it up higher. I have personally done that several times for people where I'm like, this work is great. I want this person on my team. So just go for it. Really just like pretend that you are like invincible and you have no limits and everything's incredible, and just go for it. And you will be surprised by what comes back.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Jacob, next question for you. So biggest question that people want to know, what made you want to join IDEO Collab in particular? And what is your day-to-day like there? I know that a lot of Post-its are involved.
Yeah, working at IDEO is death by Post-it. I don't know how do I make this not like super long. I guess the original impetus for me wanting to go to IDEO Collab was the kind of like I wanted to work in food science, and I'm you know, a lot of my artwork was very linked towards you know, climate awareness and climate change, and that's become much more real within the last like 4 years. And, you know, food is just so linked to all of our major societal systems. And, you know, that was something where I wanted to do future work in. And when I applied, I literally just applied through the IDEO website. It wasn't anything like special. I didn't know anybody there. And I made like a really weird digital cover letter that I to this day still think is the only reason that I even got considered for the position. So that's an interesting also caveat, is like, in addition to your work probably needing to be good, you can, you know, do like those weird things to try to get somebody's attention at a company where you've never had that kind of insight, or you don't have access to someone, you know, in the network. And I think a lot of my design career transition has been from me focusing on my craft and doing work to me actually trying to work on larger kind of like social issues and social change, kind of like systems problems. And I think that has been a really hard kind of like thing to wrap my head around, because, you know, I came from studio art, like I'm first and foremost like illustrating and drawing and making logos. But I think in a lot of ways, we have to try to figure out how we can translate that into actual change and get a message across to someone so that they can be affected to, you know, be that part of that change that we want to see in the world. So I think trying to think about how, you know, I wanted to make my sort of like path for myself in the world was larger than just me, you know, doing design. So I think, yeah, that was probably like something where, you know, if you're someone who is looking for that kind of work, then I would definitely say, like, you know, people in the IDEO network are around for creating that change, and they have a lot of different job boards and stuff for doing that. So I would definitely be. That was something that, you know, how I got a little bit more involved into the IDEO network, just because I was, you know, totally unknown to them before I kind of reached out. So yeah. And my day-to-day is basically working with a bunch of different our member companies. We kind of have a weird model where we don't really do client work. I've done some client work like on the IDEO consulting side, just because I go back and forth between the two entities. Collab is a really weird organization where we do a bunch of different digital collaboration stuff. So basically, like, we have a bunch of different annual members who are like Ford or the CBS and different sort of like large corporations that send basically member fellows from their kind of like just people that they employ. And I, as a person that is involved in IDEO Collab, is trying to basically help them to design some sort of kind of prototype of the future to solve a problem that they are concerned with working on. So the fact of the matter is that I'm working with people that are coming from very different backgrounds. One might be from Ford and one might be making refrigerators at like Electrolux or something. And so it's my job to try to find the connections between those two things and trying to sort of mitigate and create design while, creating that conversation and the opportunity for that to exist. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a guiding relationship while also creating visuals and, designing and prototyping with future technologies. So I think you have to be very adept. And I think that's something that, at least at FSU, I was able to kind of like build up a skill set between digital fabrication and like, illustrating and all of that stuff. I think that was something that I was able to craft, not just like a singular kind of like mindset of like, I'm going to be only doing this. I'm actually doing like 3 different things. And that's kind of how I think I've succeeded a little bit. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great. So Danny, last question for you, and I think that we're going to go into the chat after this. So tons of questions, and I know you could talk to us for hours about your experience with mural painting, and there were so many questions from the students about how do you get started with this. But I think one of the things that's maybe you have a bit of experience with this as far as the business side. So you have to juggle like being a business person and being an artist. And so within your mural business, well, within your selling your work to galleries as well, like what pieces of advice could you give to kind of work those 2 parts of yourself?
Yeah, I wish I had like courses that I could have taken or something to educate me on that, but I didn't. And I felt super unprepared when I first got like some city projects that are a little bit larger budget and you have to have a proposal. I think there should be classes on building a proposal for murals or big street art projects, because it involves a lot of I had to dig into my background in graphic design to create these renderings to include in the proposal with my budget, a maintenance plan. I had to make Doya an actual LLC and had to get that filed. And even on certification for getting certified to operate boom lifts and swing stages, that's super important. I had to even formulating your budgets and sending your own invoices, and even city permits. You got to get city permits to do certain things and make sure you have to get through all this red tape to have these projects lined up and ready to go. So I think those are very important things to learn, and if there's any way that could be educated somehow, I think that'd be great. So after I got some of the bigger projects, I had my company ready. It's an LLC, and definitely be prepared to not be taken seriously, because when I first had to get an LLC and get certified, and it was just no one was really taking me seriously because they're just not used to mural companies, I guess. I'm not sure. It was all very confusing to me. But I would say I forgot what was the question. I'm
Well,
like rambling.
But if you could kind of, because part of the question is how did you start? Like, what was could you tell us just maybe about the first mural that you did? Like, how was that your very first project getting started? For those that are thinking, I want to make my first mural, what could I possibly do to start my first project?
Yeah, I would suggest, I know there's like a stigma of like when a client's employing you to do something, it's like, oh, just do it for the exposure. Our budget's really small, and we're not going to be able to pay you that much. You gotta eat those. You gotta build your portfolio by doing that as much as you probably don't want to. So I got the opportunity with the residency when I was staying there. I did some of the murals, and for what he was paying me, he was getting a good deal for the work that was being put up there. And I was completely fine with that because I was trying to build my portfolio and just gain experience. And that was the foundation to get me the bigger projects with the cities. And even for those projects, you have to go to like a city council meeting, and people from the city come, and you have to talk about your work and what you're like, you have to legitimize and the budget that they're going to be spending on this mural or the project or whatever. And they vote on it, and once they vote on it, it gets accepted, and you can do the project. But starting out, definitely try and build. Even if you do it for free, you have to fund it yourself. I get some good walls and have some good concepts, and just focus on making great work towards the beginning to build something credible that will get you bigger projects.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I know that we're getting close on time. Carrie, what do you think? Do we have some questions from our chat that we want to kind of go through?
Yeah, we sure do. We have a lot of great ones, and I'm sorry we won't be able to get to them all, but I think you've covered much of it. I have one here, and understand, guys, when the chat was coming in, some would come privately to me, some were to everyone. So this is what I'm going to draw in from here a bit. Naomi, it came up in your conversation about like being on your team. What's it like to manage a team? How do you go from being a member of a team to then being either a part of one or bringing someone on, your team?
Right. It's really intimidating at first. I had a little bit of experience with it because as I worked at the SLC at FSU, I went from being a graphic designer to like the PR chair who is overseeing the team of graphic designers after a few years. So I kind of had a little bit of experience with that, but I think what makes it easiest with a team is just knowing what is expected of the people you are managing, and having been in that position before really helps. But there's always just like moments of it's kind of like the imposter syndrome we talked about earlier, where I'm kind of just like, I'm not fit to be, running a team here. But I think the way that you ground yourself when you've got that kind of thing going on is knowing that you're all working towards one common goal. And it's less like, me versus them or them versus me. It's kind of like all of us versus this problem, or all of us versus this thing that we're trying to get done. So it's kind of been, I haven't really thought about it very much as like me sort of managing people or me being on this team. It's kind of just like, how are we going to get this thing that we're trying to all get done? And it's very cool in that point because it stops being, there's no competition, there's nothing like that, because everyone is bringing their own kind of expertise to this problem that you're all dealing with. So you're just like really excited that someone else has, this experience you don't have, or you're really excited that you were fortunate enough to learn some kind of motion design or something if we need that. It's just a very like collaborative, healthy, friendly kind of thing. And I think that's why I'm sort of like reinforce my point about like social media and stuff, is because I just find that I really thrive in environments where it's like not competitive at all, and we're all just like really working together, and everyone's just happy that everyone else also has skills that they might not have. So
Thank you for that. That's a really excellent couple of points. Kathryn, tips on moving across the country for a lot of us who've maybe not left Florida before. That's an adventure.
Yeah, it is an adventure. And well, when I moved across the country, I was going to an internship housing situation. So it was basically a dorm, and I didn't have to worry about furniture. So basically what I did is I packed up my belongings and chose things that I either couldn't live without or knew that I could get rid of if I didn't need it. And what I ended up doing is I flew to Seattle and then drove from Seattle down the coast because I wanted to see a bit of the West Coast. And anyway, yeah, I did have a more comfortable start, and I didn't have to worry about everything as far as, building this whole home. But then I became more of a permanent resident and slowly brought my things over. So I think in a silly way, I had to just like look at all my stuff, and it's just stuff. So you don't really need all of it. But it was super exciting and super scary at the same time because, trying something new and especially moving is a big deal. So I think it's, be brave, and trying something new can't hurt. And it was fun, but yeah.
I would also add for that, like figuring out costs of living in a place, especially when you're either negotiating for salaries or, thinking about moving and trying to find a place. Like I know that like rent up here is just nuts. I mean, we're paying like $2,500 a month just in a 2-bedroom. So, and I was paying like $750 in Tallahassee. So it's the major kind of delimiter between like, I know some place like Boston or SF or New York, like all the like kind of like design capitals is like, you gotta know how much, like your salary might support if you're trying to do that kind of like big factor. But I mean, that's only if you're, planning on doing that without like support or taking roommates or things like that. So definitely, I would recommend getting out of your where you are, like especially if you were like born and bred Tallahassee, like go explore, broaden your horizons. It'll do so much more for you than just kind of like staying there locally trying to figure out your design bubble of your world.
Super good points. And actually, Jacob, while I have you, I had a question just come in. My goodness, how do you balance all of your creative responsibilities?
Yeah. I just sighed on mute. Was the I think like it's something where you have to learn how to delegate. And I think having a team, especially like we are a small team, like the collab team, when I was hired on, we were like 9 people. So at the beginning it was very hectic, being, like the only kind of like visual designer and crafting like our voice in the world. And then, now we're up to like, I mean, we're all based in different locations, but I mean, we're about like 30-ish, almost 40 people. And I think between when I'm actually having to like guide people and having to create, I think it's very, it's hard to code switch because you're just like going from like, oh, I'm having to like do these soft skills of like mentoring a designer and then I have to go make this very complicated thing in After Effects or like go write some code for like an hour and a half. I think giving your mind a second to switch and also trying to enlist people where you can to like do that for you or be able to work on your direction skills of saying like, hey, I have this sketch or I have this wireframe of a thing that needs to be made. And this is how I'm trying to imagine it coming to life. How can you use your skill set to kind of like create that thing? Yeah, I think that's been kind of like learning that like delegation and being able to let go of things too. As like a visual designer, like I love to be able to own the thing. And I'm like, I want my name on that thing out in the public. And like, if somebody else works on it, like I can't call it mine. But like, guess what? Like no one ever did anything by themselves. Like, I mean, those Shepherd Fairy prints, the huge ones, like he's got like a team of like 40 other designers and printers, like printing those things for him. He's not making that. Like yes, he like directed and made the stuff, but you know, that was made by a team. And just because, you know, you're like having to own it doesn't mean that or you not owning it as much doesn't make it any less yours. So I think that's the thing, is like learning to collaborate with people and delegate between those things.
Oh, that's great. But you're absolutely right. That is a challenge. And I guess actually, and Danny, a question that just came in along those lines is, so, you know, you have your business, it's murals, you do prints. How do you prioritize? What is your method on?
So I think it's sorry. I think it's very important what Jacob was saying. Delegation is huge, because it comes to a point where you can't do it all on your own. It's you're gonna need either like a small team at least to get things rolling. When I first started doing the print side of things, I wanted to do editions. That's like usually the route people take to make limited editions of prints. I had a third party in Miami. He printed them for me, but I'd be stuck with the inventory if I don't sell out. So eventually I got to a point and in growing where we were able to get our own large format printer and do printmaking ourselves, and even some silk screening. And but yeah, I can attest to the murals, the large projects. They have a team. Even Shepherd Fairy, like Tristan Eaton, they get these things done with a crew of like 6 people. My first murals, I did them on my own, but luckily, especially on the business side, the ace in my back pocket has been my brother to help me with that side of things, and shipping prints out, and shipping even growing relationships through email on our contact list. That has been a big help, delegating stuff to my brother, who also went to FSU. He was in accounting and did auditing for a while, and did not like auditing at all. And I was able to recruit him to the business and help me out there. So if you have the opportunity to grow your team, that's a huge step to growing as a brand, as an artist even.
All right. So Carrie, you said we pretty much covered.
Well, more or less with the time we have. I did notice too that our guests have been really lovely and offered their contact information to some folks to follow up, because as you and I know, Liz, we have more questions than we'll have a chance to answer here in this particular instance. So with the time remaining, Liz, was there a final question for everybody, or maybe general last piece of advice?
Yeah, maybe a general last piece of advice, but I thought maybe because there might be some questions about, even though we're seeing that you all are doing amazing work and you're all, you know, you've got your stuff going on, but there's still like maybe this feeling of like, gee, I don't know, is this going to work for me? I can see these people are really successful, but is this going to work for me? I still feel like, is it possible? You know, and I think that especially with COVID right now, there's a lot of like, you know, weariness or kind of anxiety. So one of the questions that I actually skipped over, and maybe we can come back to this now, is, you know, how, with everything going on, and you have your art career, and you have all these parts of yourself that you're working on, how do you deal with, kind of balancing this with your own kind of self-care, mental wellness? What do you do if there's a piece of advice to kind of moving forward, since we're all kind of in this situation right now? What do you do for yourself? Um, what do you do to help to not feel overwhelmed? What do you do to help kind of balance yourself, especially right now with what's going on? And if you can assure any of our folks here about the future, the future, which still is so uncertain for, it feels uncertain. So what would you all say?
Um,
I'll go first. I would just say, I mean, I've said this many times, and everyone's probably sick of hearing this, but when you are feeling really, really down in the dumps, don't turn on Instagram. Don't go on Facebook. Don't go on Twitter. Like, that's just like the worst thing you could do for yourself, especially right now. And just in general, social media is like everyone's highlight reel, and you will compare it to your everyday, and it's not healthy. So just be very mindful of that. But specifically in like these COVID really uncertain times, I can imagine it's terrifying being at school while this is happening. Just like treat yourself kindly and go with your own pace. Just because someone else is doing something that you feel is better or like more impressive, it doesn't mean anything. Everyone has their own timeline, everyone has their own clock. And I know it can be hard, like everyone agrees with that in theory, but it can be hard to apply it to yourself. But just like really be kind to yourself, especially right now, and just know that you are doing the best you can in what is, I mean, objectively a really shitty situation. So just be kind, be patient with yourself, and just celebrate little victories is what I would say. Like celebrate any little skill you're picking up, any small accomplishment you've done. I would just say like be really kind and be like overly congratulatory of yourself, because like everyone needs it right now.
That's great advice. Thank you, Naomi.
I can go next.
Yeah, go for it.
No, you're good.
Oh, Jacob, you were waiting. You can go.
Yeah, I mean, I think I am very anxious all the time now, and I think that's like something that everybody feels, even if you are like involved in work every day and or you're filled with that kind of like I'm having to be a functional human right now. But I think like celebrating any kind of like small things. I think like we just share those like memes that are like got out of bed today and you get like the gold star, but like that is very much more relevant now. I would say like if anything, I think it's interesting to think about how you could use this kind of like shift to digital workflows to maybe think about how your work can transform to be more digital, or if you think about how you can embrace your kind of skill set or grow your skill set towards that kind of like that sort of digital form or medium. I mean, if you're a sculptor, like try to check out like 3D modeling, or think about how you could try to break into like web design or small code programs to get you in that mindset. Otherwise, if you have a car, I would suggest driving out to somewhere in nature or like somewhere where there aren't people, and just like take the mask off when you're in a safe distance away from others and not be in your room. But I think in terms of like the future, it can only get better from here, I think, hopefully. But there's also like the thing that you can't let this like just totally derail your life at the same time. I think your life might be going a little slower right now, and it's definitely going slower for everyone and not just you. But for you guys, it's at a pretty formative moment in your life where, if you let go of some of those experiences that you might have had, then I think you might regret it. So that's I think the only reason why I would say to try to try to focus on those kind of like shifts of how you can see your craft evolving during this time, because it's not up to us to just stop. It's up to us to try to find a way to exist. So that's or change.
That's great advice. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, I think as we all know, right now is extremely difficult. And from a personal perspective, this has been a really great opportunity for me as well in participating in this panel, because I'm at a crossroads in my life and my field is being affected. And it's been hard to watch that happen. And a lot of what I do is very involved in person. And those are things that we can't do right now. And looking back to when I was at Florida State, I had many occasions where I would break down on a bench by Westcott, or I would panic call my dad or somebody else. And it's been nice for me to look back upon those times and realize that something did happen. I did find something and it did work out. And I know that it's not as helpful for someone to tell you that it's going to work out, but it does. And FSU does have a lot of great resources for mental health services. And as someone who is anxious, definitely utilize those resources. And today, just things are hard out there, and being safe and being outside. I personally love to bike. So I bike and bike and bike and bike, and that helps me. So definitely just, again, be easy on yourself and be patient, and things will work out and things will get better. We'll get through this time. And I look forward to that.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely see things getting better. And just have faith and trust that because the ecosystem is, regardless, it's shifting, and I see it shifting into catering to creators and even celebrities. Now you look, it's they're creators and they're YouTubers, they're making things. Like 10 or 15 years back, even street art wasn't really, you don't look for jobs as a street artist because it was just considered vandalism and graffiti and all that. But I would say just trust the process, because after the plague, it was the Renaissance and the explosion of creativity, and that's how I see it.
You guys are so brilliant. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
What
my heart's so warm. I feel so inspired.
I know, seriously. Well, we're out of time, y'all. I would love to stay for another. You may not want to, but I would love to stay for another hour or 2 or 3. This went by way too fast. But I wanted to just say thank you so much for your generosity and for coming and sharing your stories and your advice and all of your talents and everything that y'all have going on. You're coming from such unique places, but there's such a common thread with everything that you said.
Mhm.
And I hope that everyone here, that you got something out of our chat today. So Jacob and Kathryn and Naomi and Danny, thank you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you guys very much. And thank you for our audience who's just been so lovely, such great questions. I just appreciate everybody today. And I wish you all the very, very best.
Yes. So
Thank you for having me.
yes, thank you. So I think if anyone wants to reach out to you all, they can, if they have additional questions. I know I will.
Ditto.
I'll put my information in the chat.
That's awesome.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Have a good weekend. Happy Halloween.
Be safe. Have fun.
Thanks, everyone.